Okay, it's probably a bit late, Andy, but here we are standing on the 18th tee at Wentworth, but to talk about clubs. But I've got 14 clubs here, had them all the way round. Are there any changes in 2019 with regard to clubs?
There are a few, but there's no change in terms of the number. 14 is still the limit. You're still allowed to add to get to that number if you've started the round with fewer than 14, and there's still a cap on the penalties if you find that you have started with more than 14. Okay.
And let's say that, you know, on one of the earlier holes that I had a go at one near a tree and maybe bent the shaft of a club. What can I do then?
This is where the big change comes in, really, because you've got 14 clubs, that's your limit. You're not allowed to change your club. So it doesn't matter how the damage to the club happens now. If it happens in the normal course of play, as you suggest, you know, you wrap it round a tree trunk, or if it happens in anger. If the club is damaged, you're not going to be allowed to change it and replace it with something else. What you can do is you can repair it. You can use you're limited to using the original components of the club, the same grip, the same shaft, the same head, and you can use the club in the damaged state. So it's good news and bad news, really. Okay, well that's not too bad. And what happens if say the club got, you know, damaged or even broken by a third party? Yeah, that's the one circumstance where the rule really doesn't contemplate that. If it's damaged by an outside influence, as we'll call them under the new rules, then you would be allowed to change it. And we would refer to that as the Pascal rule, wouldn't we?
Yes, the Pascal-Vincent rule. Yes, that is most appropriate.
Be careful when he's got you in his buggy.
Okay, so let's say, for instance, that, you know, I played halfway decent, and I had unfortunately played a shot near a tree, bent the shaft, and I got into the playoff that night.
Ah, yes. Yeah, this is where you've got to be a little careful, because the rules allow you to continue the round using a club which has become damaged during that round. Even if it is now non-conforming, you can continue to use that club, but it only lasts for the duration of that round. Now, when you get into a stroke play playoff, that's a new round. So, for example, the common circumstance is a player damages his putter slightly, he bangs it on the ground and he's got a slight bend or a slight kink. The good news with this rule is that now that you can use the club in its damaged state, then that takes that particular penalty off the table, which was a nasty one. But
certainly was.
You do have to be aware that if you've got a club which is bent in any way, shape or form, the minute you step off the golf course, you've got to get rid of that club, because if you start with a club which is non-conforming, then that's a problem the next day, particularly if you use it.
Yeah, obviously in any future round, it's now a non-conforming club.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Well, that's good news. But I like the simplicity of that, and obviously there are all sorts of clubs now made with different component parts, and we get called a lot about the club heads that have become loose. What happens there?
There's no change there. The intention is still that if a club head becomes loose, then the player can still use the little tool that's given with that club to change it back to its original setting. Can't obviously change it to a new setting, but he can restore it to what he had at the start of the round. That's no issue.
Perfect. And Andy, with regard to the golf ball, what's changed in 2019 with regard to the golf ball?
The words "out of shape" have been removed from the little clause that allows a player to check and see if his ball is unfit for play. So the modern golf ball doesn't cut and it doesn't crack very often. So that's the basis of the new clause. To change a ball, it's got to be cut or it's got to be cracked. No longer out of shape. It can't be scuffed or scratched or something like that. It's got to be cut. It's got to be cracked. Two pretty easy words to define, and we anticipate because of that there should be far fewer balls that are ever taken out of play.
Absolutely. But of course, under the new rules, there's many occasions where you are going to be allowed to substitute a ball. I think that's
yes.
Is it the relief situation?
Yeah, it's all the relief situations. So every time you're taking relief from, say, an immovable obstruction, maybe a cart path or a sprinkler head, taking relief from casual water, which will now be known as temporary water, declaring the ball unplayable, penalty area. Any time you're taking relief, the rule now says you can use the original ball if you want to, or you can use a substituted ball. So there are lots more occasions where the player will quite legitimately be able to take the ball out of play. But now, in terms of just purely unfit for play, it's got to be cut or it's got to be cracked.
Pretty simple.
Yeah, the one little thing caveat is to say, well, when you're taking relief, we on the tour use the one ball rule, so as long as you comply with that, then you can use the original ball or the substitute ball.
Perfect.
Yep.
Very simple, and hopefully far fewer penalties.
Well, that's the intention. Hope so.
Okay, Andy, we're getting a bit close to time now, because obviously under the new rules, we've only got 3 minutes and not 5.
It's thick in here, John.
It looks pretty thick. Oh.
Ah.
Have you got it?
I've just stood on it. What do I do?
Okay, well, there's some good news. Under the new rules, there's no penalty for actually standing on the ball, so you've got no stroke penalty to be added there. But the one thing you have to do is to make sure that you put it back in the same lie that it was in before. But you probably don't know what that is, do you?
No, I don't. But what I do know, it was buried down under the roots of the grass. I couldn't see it.
Well, in that case, you've kind of got to put it back under the grass where it was before, where you kind of believed it was before. Clearly, it wasn't visible beforehand, yeah. So you've got to put it back in a situation where, again, you can't see it.
Where I've got no advantage.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But again, stressing, there's absolutely no penalty for this, yeah. And you're free to play on.
Okay, it's back there. I can't see it.
Good luck.
John, common ruling on the tour, okay, I get that I've got no penalty if I move it, but what if an outside agency moves it, a spectator?
Yes, well, of course, from 2019, we're now going to call them outside influence. But there's no difference to what you did when you moved it. It's a case of you estimate the original line, you place the ball back there. Obviously, currently, under the rules we're using at the moment, you are going to drop the ball. But you don't do that under the new rules, you place it. You estimate that position and you replace that ball in the grass.
Okay, so if ever I find myself dropping the ball in that circumstance, I'm getting it completely wrong, yes?
Correct.
Okay, so make a reasonable judgment as to where the ball was, and with not getting any advantage, I put it back in the lie that I think it was.
Absolutely spot on, Andy.
Okay.
Here we are at the 15th hole at Wentworth, and we find Andy McFee probably about to get into some serious trouble once again.
Oh, Darren, I need you to move now. Okay, Andy. Yeah, the point here under the new rules is that you can't get any help as a player with the alignment. This is an essential skill that the game feels the player must do for himself. So at any point you've got your caddy standing behind you, you need to be very, very careful. This is going to become a dangerous practice, because once you begin taking your stance, the caddy cannot be in that position. If he is, there is no way out of the penalty. So best practice here is, before you even move into the golf ball to take your stance, is to make certain that your caddy is not standing directly behind you. Again, just to repeat, the very moment that you begin taking your stance, if the caddy is directly behind you at that point in time, you have incurred a penalty.
Well, Andy's found himself a pretty bad lie close to the 9th green here at Wentworth. Let's find out what he's going to do.
Yes, I've found a nasty spot in the heather there, and you may have the skills to get the ball out of there, but I don't. So I've thought this would be a good opportunity to show how we take an unplayable ball relief under the new rules. One of the options is pretty much identical to what we do today, but the other one does have some difference. So the one that's identical, or close to identical, is the 2 club length option. You can still drop the ball within 2 club lengths of where it lies, but the big difference here is that obviously you've now got to drop the ball from knee height, but it must also stay in the relief area. It can't roll outside. So I've measured my 2 club length area from the ball. 1, 2. And again, I've got the same in the opposite direction, but I'm going to drop it just at the back end of this second club length. So from knee height, drop the ball, and as long as it stays in the relief area, that ball is in play. Now there's another option that I've got which exists today, and that's to go back on line. So I keep the point where the ball lies between me and the hole, and I can go back as far as I like. This is probably good enough. And what I do is I mark a point on that line, and it's quite important I do that, because now in this circumstance I'd no longer have to drop it exactly on the line. Again, like all the other relief rules, I've got a relief area which is 1 club length from the point that I've marked, and I can drop it anywhere in that relief area. So I think in this circumstance I'll drop it this side.
And Andy, that's a full semicircle, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Once I've got my point on the line, I've got 1 club length from that point in any direction, so I can go further back, I can go off to the side. The key thing to remember is that I've got a relief area, and the ball has to stay in that relief area once I've taken the relief. So I just stand in the relief area. I can stand outside the relief area actually if I want to, but the key is knee height, drop the ball, the ball's in play. Three consecutive notes on the siren means a play suspension, but the type of play suspension that signifies is not dangerous. So when it's not dangerous, players can keep playing. If they've started a hole, they can continue to play that hole. If one player in the group has started the next hole, then they can play that next hole. But if nobody in the group has started on the next hole, then that's the point at which they must stop. Okay, one long continuous note of the siren, that means a play suspension, and that is a dangerous situation. That means that play must stop immediately. No further strokes can be played once that sound has been heard. Now, once play has been suspended, then the player can mark his ball, and normally players will put a couple of markers in. He can lift the ball and then return to the clubhouse. Then I want to talk a little bit about what we do when play resumes. Now, if you've marked the position of the ball, you just go back. You don't have to replace the same ball. It can be any ball as long as you comply with the 1 ball rule. You just basically place the ball back in its location and the ball is back in play, and then you wait until you hear the siren, which is 2 notes, for the restart. Then if we deal with the circumstance where you come back to the area and your 2 tee markers have disappeared, what do you do then? Well, the answer is you place the ball in the spot where you estimate the ball would have been. If you ever find yourself dropping in that situation, then you're getting it wrong. So in here, I know that my ball was in and around this area. I have a yardage that I paced off from the sprinkler head, just 4 paces in front of the sprinkler, but I don't know exactly where it was. So I just agree with my fellow competitor and marker where I think the ball was, and I place the ball back in that position, and the ball is back in play. I never ever drop it in those circumstances.
Here we are at the 15th hole at Wentworth, and we are on the cart path which runs the whole length down the left-hand side of the hole. And just about here is Andy McFee's golf ball.
Yeah, we came to the 15th because it's a popular spot on the tour, and we thought this would be as place as any to show you how to take relief from a cart path that's artificially surfaced any cart path that's artificially surfaced, because there are one or two changes. Much of what we do in 2018 we'll be doing again in 2019. So I will find a spot where I don't have any interference to my stance, which is there, and then I'm still working on a relief area which is measured by 1 club length. Now this has to be measured with the longest club in your bag, other than a putter. If you do have a long putter, then you cannot use that. But if your driver is the longest club in your bag, then it's got to be your driver that you measure the area with. And again, I've got an area in which I can drop the ball. Now, one of the key changes is that under the new rules, the ball has to stay in that area. I can drop it anywhere in that area, but it has to stay in that area. If it rolls outside, I've got to then do the process again. So the other key change in this one is that I don't have to use the same golf ball. I can substitute. I can use the original ball if I want to, or bearing in mind the 1 ball rule that we operate on the tour, I can change golf ball. Anytime I'm taking a relief option, whether it be ground under repair, temporary water, a cart path, I can change the ball. So okay, I'm going to change the ball. So I've got my relief area. The final big change is that currently the height of the drop is regulated and it's shoulder height. It's still regulated under the new rules, but it drops to take all the velocity off the ball down to knee height. Now knee height is defined. It's when I'm standing in an upright position, I've got a knee height. Now I can't fiddle that by going lower and getting my knee lower and saying, well, this is now my knee height. It's when I'm stood in an upright position. So all I have to do, find a spot in the relief area where I want to play the ball from and do my best to try and drop it on that spot. Knee height, ball's in play.
So Andy, that was pretty good, and I know you found it was the nearest point of relief rather than the nicest point of relief, and that's why you came out towards the fairway.
Yeah.
I know some people have a problem with that interpretation sometimes, but it is the nearest point of relief. But what happens when you drop it and let's say the ball comes to rest against your foot?
Ah, okay. Yep. There's a stipulation in the new rules that that ball is in play. When you drop the ball now under the new rules, you can't spin it. You've just got to drop it so that it falls straight down to the ground. And if in doing that, and again it might happen quite a lot now because you're dropping potentially quite close to your foot. If it rolls up against your foot and it's accidental, then the ball's in play. You don't do anything else. It just can't touch your body before it strikes the ground. So for example, this wouldn't be a legal drop. You drop it on your foot and let it fall onto the ground that way, that wouldn't be legal. It's just got to drop straight from your hand to the ground from knee height, and if it rolls up against your foot accidentally, you just play the ball from where it comes to rest.
Okay, Andy's ball has come to rest in the bottom of this lateral penalty area, and if we come up a little bit further, we'll see the T-peg, which marks where the ball last entered that penalty area. And now what are your options, Andy?
Well, my options are very similar to they were in previous years. I can drop within 2 club lengths of the point of entry. 1, 2. And again, I have to make sure that the ball stays in the relief area. I can also substitute the ball, so even though I can see that ball and I can get it quite easily, I can substitute the ball. I can drop the original if I want to, or I can substitute, and I drop from knee height, and as long as the ball stays in my relief area, then that's okay. The ball didn't hit my foot there, but if it did, that wouldn't have been a problem either, because it was accidentally just play the ball from the new position. The alternative that you have this year, that you in 2018 that you won't have going forward, is the equidistant margin drop. That will no longer be automatically available to players. It goes away, but it doesn't go away entirely. Check the local rules, because committees do have the right to put it on, but it will be very infrequent where that happens, but it will be stated on the local rule sheet.
Indeed, Andy, we've spoken, and we are intending each week to have a specialised note for the players which will point out these lateral penalty areas where they're going to have that opposite margin reinstated, but only for individual and particular hazards where we feel that it's not possible for the players to play using the rules as they are.
Yeah, and some weeks when you look at the local rule sheet, you might just see penalty areas that carry an equidistant margin this week. None.
And one other thing, of course, here at Wentworth, in a classic example, we have a number of lateral hazards which will become lateral penalty areas, which extend to the boundary of the golf course. Clearly, if someone entered from the out of bounds side into the penalty area, they wouldn't have an option apart from going back to where they played the last stroke from.
Correct.
So we're going to have that on our hard card as one of the rules where we will reinstate and allow players to go to the opposite margin in those narrow circumstances.
And in this demonstration, we've only dealt with the 2 club length option. Now we're going to deal with the back in line option.
Here we have the position where the ball last entered the lateral penalty area, and if we keep that between ourselves and the hole, and we end up with Andy McFee.
And we thought we'd try to demonstrate how you take relief back on a line from a red penalty area in 2019. Many of the things that we do in 2018 we're going to do exactly the same in 2019. So we define our point, then we keep that directly between ourselves and the hole and go back as far as we like. Now this one, I'm not going to go any further back because it's all bad news back there. But I've got my line here. Now in 2018, and earlier than that, I would have to drop it on that line. But in 2019, the concept of the relief area, which applies in all the other rules, is still there in this back in line, which gives me an option to drop it either within 1 club length of the line that way, or 1 club length this way. Now my choice here would be to drop it on this side, so I just have to make sure that the ball doesn't go nearer the hole than this point that I've chosen. That's why I've marked it, and again I can go back as far as I like, but once I've chosen that point, it can't go nearer the hole than that point. Then all I have to do is I have to make sure that I drop the ball in the relief area from knee height, and it stays in the relief area. So that ball would be in play.
Here we are in a bunker, Andy. Under the new rules, are there many changes?
There's a few. This is one of the rules that hasn't changed an awful lot, but the changes that have been made are pretty substantial. Well, what's the same? You still can't ground the club in a hazard immediately behind the ball, immediately in front of the ball, or touch the sand on a backswing. But the big change is that loose impediments in a bunker, currently you can't touch them before you play the stroke. Now you can move them. You've just got to be careful that you don't move the ball. So a twig like this, I can move that. The leaf, again, right behind the ball, as long as I don't move the ball, it's fine. A stone in a bunker, we currently have a hard card rule for that. We don't need that anymore. But again, you've just got to be careful that if the movement of the stone causes the ball to move, you would be under penalty. But all of these little loose impediments, they're not seen as part of the test that the golf course has to offer the player. So now, if you can move them in what is currently a through the green, would be in the general area, then you can move them in a bunker or in a penalty area. Now, the other big change is that you can still declare your ball unplayable in a bunker, and if you elect to use the 2 club length option, which I can't use this club, remember, I've got to use my longest club in the bag, then the ball's got to stay in the bunker, and if I go back on a line, the ball has also got to stay in the bunker. But there's a new option now. If I want to declare it unplayable in a bunker, I can go outside the bunker. It's going to cost me an additional stroke, so it's not 1 stroke, that's 2 strokes, but I can go back on a line and drop it anywhere outside of the bunker. The other change is one that is quite hard to demonstrate here, but the lip of a bunker goes now just to the sand, and that's the edge of the bunker. Any lip at all, whether it's grass covered or soil covered, that's no longer part of the bunker. As if your ball were to embed in that, then you'd be embedded in the general area and you'd be entitled to take an embedded ball relief. Now the other change is that I can still place my golf clubs in a bunker as long as I'm not doing anything to improve my lie of the ball. But generally, the bunker rule has been relaxed a little bit. As long as you're a long way from the ball, you know, if I'm leaning on my club touching the sand, that's okay. The area around my ball is protected. Yes, I can't improve that in any way, shape or form. But if I'm touching the sand by just leaning on it like this, and I'm not gaining any information for the stroke, then there's no problem with that. And also, I don't know if any of you have ever played golf with Mike Stewart, but you see Mike in a bunker sometimes, ball doesn't often come out, hit the club into the sand in anger, just as Stewie does. Well, that's not going to be a penalty in the future. You cannot touch the sand in the bunker immediately behind the ball, immediately in front of the ball, or on the backswing. But all of these other little bits and pieces that we've just shown you, they're seen as benign and no longer a penalty.
Well, that's great news, Andy, but of course we can still fine Mike Stewart for hitting the sand, can't we?
Oh, we can, and we will, big time. Well, I've managed to get my ball onto the first green at Wentworth, and I'm going to mark it. And that act of marking and lifting the ball has added significance in the new rules, because once I've done that, I have fixed the spot. That is where I'm going to play my next putt from. You may remember the scenario a few years ago when Billy Horschel marked his ball on the 15th green at Augusta and it was blown by the wind into the water. That can't happen under the new rules. Once you've marked the ball and lifted it, you've fixed the spot. That is where I'm going to play my next putt from. Under the new rules, I can still repair an old hole plug. I can still repair a ball mark. And something new under the new rules is that I can repair spike damage. I can see somebody's dragged their spikes along there, so I can quickly tap that down. That bit there might need a little bit of help, but that's new. One of the other things that's new in the new rules on the putting green is that even in pointing out a line for putting, I can touch the green now. I can do it, or the caddy can do it. The restriction is on improving. I can't improve my line of putt. Well, hopefully you've had a good chance to take a look at some of the videos that John and I have put together. Whilst we were doing it, we found it was quite hard to replicate some of the situations that we'll find commonly on the golf course, so we thought we'd do a little recap. And I know that John, you wanted to say a little bit more about the dropping and the relief area.
Yes, Andy. Dropping. Under the new rules, I think everybody's aware that we're dropping from knee height. And everybody has a knee height, and it's when you're standing, that is the knee height. Your height of your knee when you're standing up. But the one good thing about the new rules is that they don't go into a great description as to how you must drop it. So as long as you drop it from knee height, you can almost do anything you like. So you can bend over, you can bend sideways, forwards, go down on one knee if you like, as long as the ball is dropped from knee height. And the most important thing is you're dropping into the area. I try and look at this as, I know you realise I like pizza, so I regard it as being a slice of pizza. And in most cases it's a quarter size of pizza you're trying to drop the ball in. And the rules are asking you to make sure that that ball remains on that piece of pizza and you play it from there. There's no longer the ball can run 2 club lengths away and then you're almost 2 club lengths away and you play from there. That's not going to happen anymore. As soon as it leaves that piece of pizza, you're redropping it. And if it leaves the pizza again, you've got to place it on that piece of pizza and play from there. So it's relatively simple, and as I say, you can drop it in any manner. It's just got to be from knee height. Now, I think, Andy, you're going to tell us something about deflections, aren't you?
Yes, deflections. There are a number of deflections that happen in the game, and currently they're all treated differently. Well, the new rules, they're all going to be treated the same. At the moment, if your ball hits an outside agency, which will be an outside influence in the new rules, the ball is played as it lies. And that's the way that all deflections are going to be treated going forward. So currently, if you hit the face of a bunker with a stroke and it comes back and hits you, that's a one-stroke penalty. That goes away, there is no penalty for that, but you're going to play the ball as it lies. Another accidental deflection that happens today is the double hit. Well, under the rules as they stand at the moment, then you have to count the stroke that you made and add one penalty stroke. Well, that penalty stroke is going to go away. The outcome is random. You just need to count the stroke that you've made, and wherever the ball goes to, you're going to play the ball from there. So it's exactly the same as if a ball were to hit an outside influence. Wherever the ball goes, you're going to play the ball from there, no penalty. This is now treated in exactly the same way. There is one little flip side to all of this, in that in the match play situation where you strike the stroke or strike the ball and it hits your opponent, currently you're allowed to replay that stroke if you do it immediately. That goes away under the new rules. Wherever the ball goes, if it's an accidental deflection, you're just going to play the ball from the new position, but there is no replay. And John, I think you wanted to say something more about the provisional ball.
Yes, Andy, the provisional ball. Thankfully, a number of things about the provisional ball are the same. And one of those is you must tell your playing partners you're playing a provisional ball, and they know that. So remember, before you play a provisional ball, you must make sure that they're aware that you are doing it. And again, it's a good idea to play a provisional ball. As you know, all hazards become penalty areas in the future, and if you know that your ball could be lost outside that penalty area, then you're entitled to play a provisional ball, just in case you don't find it. So it is a good idea. But let's now look at the things that have changed with the provisional ball. They're all very positive. You were currently prevented from coming back to play a provisional ball, and decisions kind of gave you about 50 yards as the maximum distance you could walk forward. So you can in fact come back from any place on the golf course and play that provisional ball. So there's no worry about that. But the one thing you must remember is that we've cut down on the searching time, and that's gone from 5 minutes down to 3 minutes. So you got 3 minutes, but if you start to go up to the area, as you're approaching the area, you think, oh, this is very, very deep, I'm going to go back and play a provisional ball now. That is now allowed. So that's a very positive change as far as we're concerned. And one other thing I wanted to mention was, of course, marking the ball on the putting green. If you mark the ball on the putting green and lift your ball, at that moment, what happens is, if the ball subsequently moves, you're going to play the ball from that spot. There's going to be no penalty. Whatever happens, if that ball moves for some reason, once you've replaced it, you are going to put it back to the position where you originally lifted it from. So that's a very positive change, but it's slightly different to what we do at the moment. Now I wanted to just ask Andy about some DMDs, Andy.
Yes, John, distance measuring devices. That really was hard to replicate on the golf course, but distance measuring devices under the rules are going to be allowed. But the bad news for all the tour players is that the tour are going to exercise the authority within the rules to prevent their use. So you will still be restricted to the use of the yardage book, and you won't be able to get any distance using any electronic devices. John, just before I do the summary, something occurred to me, and it's regarding the caddies, because there's a new authority in the rules where the caddy will now have authority to mark your ball, the player's ball, but only on the putting green. Currently, he has to get specific authority from you to do that, but under the new rules, every time your ball is on the putting green, then the caddy now has authority to mark it. Obviously, he's got to go through the correct process because you are ultimately responsible, so he has to mark the ball first, and he has to do everything correctly. But he can, under the new rules, mark the position of the ball on the putting green only. And then, moving into a summary, This has been a long process. We started it with the rules bodies in 2013 when they invited the European Tour to be part of the process, and I would stress that we have been a part of this process right from its very inception. Now, golf is a complicated game. It's played over a large tract of land. We play in a variety of weather conditions, and there's an awful lot that can happen to the golf ball. So the rules are never going to be simple, but hopefully this process has removed a lot of penalties which, for the sports fan, they led to some doubts as to the logic behind our sport. And it's never going to make them simple, but hopefully they're easier to understand. There's a logic that flows through these rules, which we quite like. And hopefully, with the removal of all of these, what the game now considers to be unnecessary penalties, the game will be a little bit more understandable, and people can enjoy it, and the game can move forward and progress. There's a lot to learn. The scale of this particular revision of the rules is unprecedented in our lifetimes, so we are anticipating a lot of rulings in the early weeks while players get used to it. And please ask, because there is a lot to learn. That we've prepared quite a lot of information for you to digest here, but hopefully we can see this game that we all love improving and getting better and better, and being that little bit more easy for ourselves and for the public to understand.
Yeah, Andy, you're quite right. Obviously, if any of the players have any problems whatsoever on the new rules, you know where to find us, and also our colleagues, who will also be undergoing a lot of education over the winter period. They'll have a pretty good idea of these new rules, so if you've got any problems whatsoever, you definitely know where to find us. And Andy, I know we've covered it earlier in the video, but I just wanted to ask you to reiterate that the situation with stones in bunkers with new rules.
Yes, it's a pretty important change that a bunker has now got its own heading in the definitions. A bunker is defined. It's no longer a hazard as we know them today, and it's separated from these penalty areas that we're now going to talk about. But the big change is that we're going to be able to move loose impediments in a bunker, and we will really feel the benefit of that on our tour. For example, when we go play at Valderrama and we have all of these acorns that come down into a bunker, that's not really part of the proper playing of the game. It's not the test that we're looking for a player playing out of sand. That's not the test that the game's looking for.
And it's leaves as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's any loose impediment, and of course a stone is a loose impediment. Now, currently, to get around this on the hard card, we have the stones in bunkers are movable obstructions. We won't need to do that any longer. You won't see any reference to a stone in a bunker on the hard card. You will still be able to move them because they're a loose impediment, but the subtle difference is that now that these things are loose impediments, you have to be careful. If the ball moves, then the player will be on the hook for a penalty, whereas under the movable obstruction rule, now you weren't. But we don't have that option now. Again, the good news is that you're going to be able to move the stone, but the bad news is that you've got to be careful the ball doesn't move.
Absolutely. Anyway, a lot of very, very good changes, a lot of very sensible changes, and I think we both believe that the rules are in very good shape going forward from 1st of January 2019.
Good luck.